guys, and welcome back to Manch Talk. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be laughing, but I forgot to put my mic on, so there was a quick rush at the last minute there. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to this episode of Manch Talk, which is going to be a little different. I'm very honored to have a guest in the studio with me today to talk about the scandal that has developed here with the Sununu Youth Detention Center. Lisa, who is known as one of the Jane Does in the lawsuits, has decided to come forward to talk about both her personal experience, but also to let us know just a little bit about the history of this center, what they were doing to juveniles in sort of a general sense. So perhaps if you are sensitive to these kinds of topics, this might be the one that you want to skip. But I wanted to give her an opportunity to come in to really sketch for people the reality of what happened. I'm sure everyone's been following the story to some extent, perhaps like me too, sort of arm's length. You kind of know there's things going on, but you're not entirely sure what exactly. But even this week in the Union Leader, you may have seen the article, the headline, the subtext is YDC abuse trial. The headline was former worker guilty of aiding in sexual assaults. James Woodlock was acquitted on the third charge of being an accomplice, but he was found guilty on 2 charges. So it is something that's in the news. It is something that is a blight on the history of Manchester and a blight on the state of New Hampshire. And there's some sad and troubling stories around how the state is now dealing with these victims. So if you don't want to follow what this is about, please switch off now or go to a different channel. Otherwise, it is my great pleasure to welcome Lisa to this edition of Manch Talk. And now I'm going to scoot her this way so we can be on the camera together here.
Hi.
Hey, Lisa. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Carla.
So, give us a little bit of back. Who are you? Where did you grow up? How did you get caught up in all of this?
Got it. Yep. So my name's Lisa. I'm a New Hampshire native. I come from a nuclear family. My dad's a patriot. I was raised on the Greek side of Manchester, on the east side. Calevis Park, if some of you are familiar with that, is my family's park. Christos was the first Greek American from Manchester who was killed in World War II, and then his fellow combatants formed a committee of World War I veterans, and they worked tirelessly with the city and federal officials to fill a tribute, to find a fitting tribute, and so that's where the park came from for that.
So old-time Manchester
Yes,
family,
yes,
right? So you
yes.
guys grew up in a big house over on the east side where we are now?
Yep, we grew up on the east side, yep. Where we are now, yep, over on Bell Street, and yep, had, it was a, normal 3-bedroom home, had a yard. My yaya and papu grandparents lived right next door, and they also had a yard, so we had like a garden in between where we grew vegetables, fruits, things like that. Sunflowers, really lived, I came from a good home. I have good parents, and the parents that tried, As I got into my teens, I was a free thinker, free spirit. I did rebel, growing up in a military home. It's fair, it's strict, So, there were things I had picked up, some delinquent charges, non-violent offenses, in and out of the juvenile court system, sent to placements, and then YDC, against my parents' wishes, Judge Champagne and Judge Capistran, who were the judges for juvenile courts back then, until I was 18.
So just to set people in the kind of era, what are we in the 90s?
Yes, we're in the 90s. We're in the early 90s, yep.
Okay. And when you say sort of, I mean, I think most teenagers could definitionally be called juvenile delinquents at some stage. But as you mentioned, nonviolent crimes, really things like what? Like drinking in a cemetery?
Drinking in a cemetery, or what they considered running away from home, which wasn't. I just wanted some more freedom.
But basically just kind of free-thinking, rebellious.
Yes, suspended from school, truants, things like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, not
violent.
Serious
crimes.
No,
okay.
no, they were not serious. No.
So you got kind of caught up in this system where you then end up in the juvenile courts,
Correct,
right?
yes, yep. And I was sent to placements at first to get evaluated, then sent home on probation. I still, was rebelling a little, so then sent to another placement and then sent to YDC from that placement because I was trying to leave there. So they sent me to YDC, and
things did not go well from there, right?
Right. I was sent to Sanders Cottage,
okay.
But it was not a cottage.
So can you describe, just for people who aren't familiar, right? So we're talking about a huge piece of property, which, by the way, for folks back home, is actually now going to be sold, I believe, and privatized as a fund to pay part of the fines, if I'm understanding the whole thing correctly. So I did read in yesterday or maybe earlier this week or last week's paper, hey, this property is going to go up for sale. So it's here on the east side of the city in the north end. It's a really nice piece of land. So, that's kind of interesting as well. But sort of like, so what was the setup? Different buildings, boys,
Yes.
girls mixed? Like
Yep.
what
It was when you first drive down on the left, the first cottage that you would see was the brick building that had fences and barbed wire around it. That was called King's Cottage, and that was for the boys that were in maximum, supposed to be for like maximum offenses, things like that. Then when you take a right, there would be Spalding Cottage, which was boys and primarily for sex crimes that they had done. And then you go up the road, you keep following up the road, and on the left was East Cottage. That was also a boys' cottage, minimum security. And across the way was Sanders Cottage, the only cottage for the girls. It was a brick building and a locked facility. They had rings of keys that only the staff had, brick exposed as well on the inside and the interior too. All the windows were welded shut, all with bars on the outside, storm windows down, bars on the outside. And then there was also like a screen, but the screen was like so dark, there was no sunlight that could come in. There was no way out. There was no
escape.
There was
really,
no escape,
right?
right.
So
the first floor had like the rec room, the chow hall, and the newsroom where we could watch news. That was it for TV.
Oh, wow.
The second floor, which is where we slept, consisted of, I would say, about a 6 by 10 foot cell. And I say cell because the beds were metal frames welded to the floor. We had a metal desk facing the window that we couldn't see out of, welded to the floor. I received a ripped and dirty gym mat-like material for my mattress, no pillowcase, no sheet, and a wool blanket. And I got there in the warmer months. For a mattress. No bathroom. There was a hole in the door, a square hole that you had to put your arm out of to knock so you could go to the bathroom. And sometimes, like when you were on restriction, they didn't come. And so myself, as well as other victims, were forced to defecate and urinate on the floor and then receive punishment for that.
That's terrible. First of all, thank you for your bravery to come and to speak out. I know that was a difficult decision for you.
Yes, it was very difficult. I was a Jane Doe for years, and due to what's been going on recently, which I will get into, I've decided to come out publicly and to speak out. So that was when I first got in there. Girls were crying at night, locked in.
How old were you?
14, going on 15,
okay.
right in that time frame. And
of course, also just a difficult period,
yes.
Sorry to interrupt, for teenagers. It's like, do we forget everyone's hormones are kicking in? Life is changing. You're experiencing brain growth and possibly brain atrophication as well, right? Like you're pushing all your boundaries. And I mean, I talk a lot about the criminalization of childhood, but this sounds like a criminalization of childhood where you literally got caught up in what sounds like a prison industrial complex.
Yes, and it was called Youth Development Center at first because it was supposed to be a residential treatment facility for troubled youths. It was not that. The staff didn't need a degree. They just needed a GED or high school diploma to become a staff. I was not educated. School was looked at as a privilege. Anywhere that we traveled on the grounds, I was shackled by my feet, had a belt around here where I was handcuffed, and then if we were walking in line, you were also handcuffed to somebody else, and that's how you walked. And it was like that. Wherever, you could only travel on the grounds. I endured there physical, sexual, mental abuse, emotional manipulation, and a plethora of like psychological games, just depending on what staff was working. The beatings were just horrendous, and the way that they would talk to us, you whore, you slut, just things that I never heard from my own parents, you know. Solitary confinement was days on end. You're supposed to be in there 23 hours and you get 1 hour out. That didn't always happen. Meals were missed, not brought up. There was, if we're upstairs, whoever's in restriction, you have to go down the hall, down the stairs, over, and inside was a staff room that had basically was all completely enclosed except for a door and a window that faced the one of the bathrooms in the girls' area. So they couldn't hear us, or they didn't come up in time, or they didn't care. I don't know, all of the above. School was weaponized as leverage. I was told school is a privilege. If you're in restriction, you don't go. If you act out, and what they mean by act out is disagree in any way, shape, or form with what the instruction was. So literally, if you jump and they say how, and you say how high, yeah.
So, and was restrictions sort of similar to what we would understand for solitary?
Yes,
Is that
yes,
kind of what
correct.
It was?
Yes, solitary confinement or in the hole, I guess some people from jail call it,
yep.
right?
And would that be in your own cell?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wasn't always allowed to shower either,
So pretty nightmarish scenario, right?
Yes.
For drinking in a cemetery.
Yeah.
Yeah. How old were you when you got out?
I aged out at 18.
Okay.
But while I was there, because you never get released. Once you're in, it's sort of the best way I can explain it is like when people go to prison and they have, let's say, a sentence for 5 years and they can get out early, but then they're on parole. So you are owned by them. And so during that time, I was sent to like a rehab when I didn't even use drugs, and sent back. I was just put in different places until I aged out. At 3 days before, or maybe a week before my 18th birthday, I was in solitary confinement.
Oh, geez.
Yep.
Okay.
And then went back home, and I had aged out, but I was not prepared nor acclimated for the outside because I had been institutionalized for so long. There was no help, there was no therapy, it was just like the state set me up for failure. To cope with everything, I didn't even have a high school diploma or GED when I got out. I wasn't schooled. And all the different places that I had went, including YDC, I did turn to drugs to numb. And, though I've never been suicidal, I was made to feel like I was nothing. So I didn't really care if I lived or died, although I wasn't suicidal, if that makes sense.
It does, of course. I mean,
Yeah.
and take all the time you need. This is an incredibly difficult conversation.
Yeah.
It is hard for people who don't who aren't exposed to these kinds of milieus to actually understand. As a young lawyer, I did a lot of work in prisons and in that kind of environment. So don't you know, I understand 100% why you would have felt despondent coming out of this process. So you had some rough years after that.
Yes.
But there's a spark and a good story here too. You found yourself again.
I did, and December 30th, 2004 is my clean date, and it took a long time to get there, but I haven't relapsed since. I'm a mom, I'm a business owner, I also work at another place as well. I, help people in my own way by using tarot to help others that are in that spiritual niche that might want, emotional support, because the woo-woo stuff aside, it's flashcards, 78 cards of things that people go through in life. Our situations and circumstances are different, but it's the same feelings and emotions. So that, I just try to help others. But I'm not a licensed professional. I also, I have earned a PhD in life. And so it's not also super bad, but I mean, parents really need to know that it could happen to any kid. We didn't all come from broken homes, not that if you came from a broken home, you deserve that, because you don't, but the way the media portrays it, like we were lost from the jump, and that just wasn't the case. There was there were very few kids that were there for violent offenses when I was there anyway, And
honestly, I mean, let's just unpack that for 2 secs. It's like, well, even if you are in prison for really bad stuff, there is an onus on the state to not perpetuate that kind of trauma, right?
Yep.
So it's regardless, and obviously in your case, there wasn't something that was fundamentally serious in a way that would justify any of this, but I'm saying nothing justifies basically what was going on at this time in this state-run institution that, we're now seeing, they keep changing up what the deals were. So
yes.
Can we talk about that a little bit? Sort of, so you are one of the Jane Does in the lawsuit.
I was one of the Jane Does in the lawsuit for years, and until recently, because the state's actions have compelled me to speak out and go public. Specifically, because the state had given us hope that they were going to take semblance of responsibility. And then they just pulled the rug from underneath us. So there's two ways that this could go. You can go through a settlement fund, or you can go to trial. When you are going through the settlement fund, it was working as intended and agreed, a non-biased, trauma-informed third party to decide victims' awards, like Judge Broderick was. But then, I'm disappointed to say Kelly Ayout's actions to pass a bill under the cover of dark without notice to go back on that agreement.
And that happened, just so that we can stop so folks back home understand. So basically, and correct me if I paraphrase anything wrong, there was this agreement where they were like, there's going to be an expert who understands this world and this trauma that was created here, who is going to work with the victims to come to a fair and just solution.
Non-party, but non-biased.
And then last year, or
no,
even
just
earlier,
a few months, just like August.
So in August, up at the State House, somehow that whole agreed upon sort of, let's say,
and had been working that way for years,
has been sort of preempted or sort of overlaid by this new bill that is not victim forward, that is not sympathetic to this world.
And even more so than that, it's there was no longer fairness in that. So it went from a non-biased third-party trauma-informed to a state-appointed official not trauma-informed, no more non-biased, and also the state gets to veto. The DA's already vetoed. They can veto awards anytime they want. They think that's too much. No, we're not doing that. So basically, the state gets to choose what their restitution is for abusing us. They've also recently vetoed about 20% of the awards because the AG has the power, and the state is abusing their power again. Kelly Ayotte in the early 2000s, who also did this passed this bill into the cover of dark, hundreds of kids were abused under her watch, and she did nothing, and now she's betraying us again. And it's just confusing because she proclaims to have passion for victims. Well, where's that care for me and for us, you know? When it's, when claimant goes into the settlement fund, they're putting their lawsuit on hold. Because we want privacy, they wanted fairness and privacy, you know, and we don't get that now. You don't get closure either. And so, you know, I'm just calling a call to action. If there's any senators or legislators, if you're watching, please take action. We want the settlement fund to return to the way it was, or at least shine some light, because this is not fair, you know.
Okay, so thank you, first of all, because it takes a lot of bravery, and this is such a tough subject, right? Like, I can just feel the energy, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about what we think can be done, right? So yes, there's a problem. We see it. There are a lot of people like you who are harmed. There's over 1,200, I believe, claimants for this. And that
stemming back to even the
80s.
late, the late 70s,
from
early
the
80s,
70s, yeah, you're right. Actually, it goes from the 70s up until fairly recently.
2000s, yeah. And they even took down the Sanders Cottage. They took down previous cottages. It's just, the abuse was just...
And so there's the abuse, but part of the abuse is actually the silencing or the not taking the victims seriously, or as you, I believe, used the term rug pulled from, hey, this is how we're going to do it, to something entirely different. Do you have a sense, is it just economics? Are they just concerned it's going to cost too much?
Yes, I believe, and yes, I do believe that. But they attacked the settlement fund while trials were already paused. So it's like now the trials are paused because of, for another case to be heard in the Supreme Court. And now they're attacking the settlement fund, which they already made an amendment to it, and then they attacked it even further. So it's like the state can say, we don't want to give you this. It's really like if you committed a crime and then said, I want to pick my punishment.
Which is kind of what they're doing, right? Like they allowed a lot of crimes to be perpetrated
where people have been convicted of
children. And I don't think the state should be able to run away from this responsibility. And, you know, I think it might behoove us. I would love to help you guys in whatever way I can. Obviously, sharing these stories, making sure people actually understand that there was fundamental harm that happened to thousands.
There's a lot more. I just can't get into detail because of the
pending lawsuit.
Correct.
So
but I wanted to speak out, not just for myself, but for the other Jane and John Does and for the other victims. This is just not right, you know? And when it first started, it didn't start with, we wanted justice, you know? And these abusers, these predators is what they are, denied it. The state denied it. Now some of the claimants that are getting apologies. And these staff that were not even showing up to court, taking it seriously 2 years ago, are now behind bars. One back-to-back 10-year sentence, another, you know, more to follow, you know, and others have followed since then too. So it is economic,
And because we're going to run out of time, and I will definitely have you back again. You know, maybe we can get one of your lawyers in, maybe we can get a few people. from different sort of perspectives. I think you really bring the human face to this, the ability to sort of distill due to a lot of work on your part, right? Like it is never easy if you've grown up or you've experienced trauma. A lot of people can't get to the point where they can advocate for themselves and they can advocate for others. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's leave folks with, okay, so the call to action would be, are you guys still looking for victims to come forward?
No.
Okay.
So
that part is closed.
Yes. Yep.
So now we're saying we need to look to the legislature to help to create an environment that was more what was originally agreed to than the sort of rug pull we've now seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Judge Broderick even spoke out too when he resigned because of the change.
Okay, so there's probably a bunch of things here, right? Because I'm hearing corruption in the coroner office. I'm hearing corruption in the AG's office stemming back from a long time. One of the things we might be able to do is to start filing 91As. Who knows, they're probably not going to have kept all the information, but there might be things that could be gleaned from something like that. Do you think it would be helpful if more victims come forward to tell their personal stories? Is that something you want? Do you need backup?
I don't need backup. I'm here to speak for myself, but also for the Jane and John Doe victims that don't want to speak because they don't have to. You know, they shouldn't have to relive all this. You know, there are other victims that have went public, but I'm coming public out of being a Jane Doe because I can speak for myself and I can speak on behalf of the other victims too, you know.
So any last thoughts you would want people back home to sort of understand, or is that?
Yeah, this can happen to any kid. It doesn't matter. You parents, please be aware when your child is getting in trouble in the juvenile court system, whatever state you're from. I don't know what it's like now because I'm an adult, and thank goodness my son hasn't gotten in trouble. He's 17 and on his way to college. So
at St. A's, by the way.
Yes.
So yes, I think that is a beautiful, good warning. The other thing, to sort of bring it full circle, we were talking about light and darkness before the time. And obviously you had a very dark experience in your life and you've sort of worked towards the light in order to process this. You said to me before the show started that it struck you that, you know, your youth in some ways was stolen or destroyed or really hurt and impacted with this experience. And now you're seeing the perpetrators of this violence against you and against other children having to spend their golden years. So your youth was taken and now there's, you know, some retribution.
Yes, judicial, but also I see the karmic justice in it is take our adolescence, pay with your golden years. You know, it's too bad it had to happen like that, but it's nice to see it in my lifetime.
So we are out of time. This was a unique Manch Talk. I want to thank you for coming, for telling your story. I want to encourage people back home to actually follow this story and to maybe get involved so that we can see true justice take place for these children who were harmed under the auspices of state control. Thanks for joining me, guys.